Hello. Happy Friday, everyone. I'm Kyler Cheatham on the Confluential Live, joined by Adam Cheatham, of course, every week. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining us today. This is our live stream where we kind of talk about what we're seeing in the marketplace with our real projects, real clients, and bring those themes to you in order to help your projects be most successful when it comes to implementing technology in your organization, IT, leadership, all of those different pieces here. So with that, I hope you are having a beautiful Friday. It's very snowy here in Colorado. We always got to have a good April snow just to remind us that it's possible. So we're having that right now. But we'd love to hear where you're joining us from. And if you're coming over from the TikTok live, thank you so much for joining me this morning. If you've never joined our TikTok lives, feel free to follow me. And that's something that we hear a lot on. We had an unbelievable conversation around AI versus reality this morning. So we're kind of taking a lot of that over here and talking about, is your tech stack trash? Is it trash? Should you throw it out into the garbage? But in all seriousness, it can be, we're just talking to a client that's having a hard time kind of evaluating what their next steps are. We have that conversation every day, and there's so much going on. Organizations are so big. There's complexities around teams and roles and all kinds of different things when it comes to how technology is executed within your organization. So that said, I will let Adam introduce himself. Put your comments, questions, join the conversation in the comments, wherever you're joining us from, and we can go from there. So happy Friday, Adam.
Happy Friday indeed. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Adam Cheatham. I'm the CEO of The Confluential and happy to have you this morning, afternoon, or evening. We're looking forward to this conversation because at the end of the day, you always have questions about what should we do with our tech stack, which pieces are the ripest for improvement, replacement, whatever you like, and how do we know the difference? So certainly looking forward to this conversation.
Very cool. So let's start from the beginning, and we've got the whole United States covered here, from all the way over in Arizona, which obviously you're warmer than us, to here in Colorado, to Pennsylvania. So thank you guys for joining us today. So first and foremost, the headline of this is your tech stack trash. What often, and that's kind of just a funny cheeky way to say it, like, for your core technologies, how do you know if you have a fundamental issue? And I'm not talking like dusty, crusty, right? We don't like it. It's bothering us type of thing. I'm talking about like fundamental problems. How do you know if, they're bringing it to you and you're like, that is a legit issue?
Yeah, well, I think that one of the clients we're working with and have had a fantastic relationship for quite some time is a good example. Well, maybe a good story to tell on this. When I first started working with them, gosh, I feel like it's 2 years ago now, something like that. They had this challenge where they were saying, we have an aging infrastructure and our system will go down at any moment in time. And so we need to replace it. And that was an interesting position to come into because you start talking to the business and the business says, IT told us this trash story 15 years ago. Oh my goodness, our ERP is going offline. They're not going to support it anymore. And so we need to replace it urgently because if it goes down, we're toast. And that story that IT told the business 15 years ago reared its ugly head again in a different way, though, because there's a misinterpretation here. IT misinterpreted the discontinuation of updates, which is typical for software packages. We're no longer going to support the future of this system. That doesn't mean that we're going to take it offline, right? It just means that we're not going to do any more patches. We're not going to do any more security updates. We're not going to add any more functionality to it. We're going to leave it like it is, especially your version of it, right? That's what IT misinterpreted as this system is going away 15 years ago. So they went and ran to the business and said, we need to replace it. And the business is like 15 years later, like it hasn't happened yet. And here you are again with the same old story. The difference is now their tech stack really does have problems. And the reason for that is because their software, which is hosted on premise, which is fine, is on hardware that is no longer manufactured, which means you can't get it. Now we have a different type of problem. If the hardware fails, what do you put the software on, right? And their software, they can't move it over to any other type of hardware. It's beholden to this particular type of server. And now we have an actual problem, which is where do we get more servers? And the answer is for a lot of organizations is eBay. I like as much as that sounds shocking to people, like there are many companies who are buying antiquated hardware on eBay because you can't buy it new anymore. Now we're buying used equipment that somebody else sold. We have no idea why they sold this equipment. We just know that they sold it. And this is now where we get into is your tech stack trash? Yes, now it is, right? Because your disaster recovery path is dependent on the idea that somebody's used equipment is going to work. And that's a challenge for me at least in saying we have a problem right now. There's a piece of this conversation which is, do we have a problem, yes or no? Are we going to accept that this is the way that it could go? And at the end of the day, nobody knows the answer to that question, right? That's like saying, trying to predict the future. When will this software collapse? Maybe never, right?
Mhm.
You can keep rolling the dice on that, and maybe you could turn out to be right. But the challenge with this scenario is, do you want to act like you believe this is a problem?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Do you want to act like you believe if your software goes down, there is a chance that it will never come back up? And if the answer is yes, then you have a tech stack problem that you need to solve. Maybe it never does, and that's fine. But you have a conversation about, are you accepting this risk or are you acknowledging it and doing
Uh-huh.
something about it? And those are different things.
Yeah. That's such an interesting story. So what did they decide to do?
They are working a number of different paths.
Yeah, and I
So
think
their
that's
first is, how do we minimize our dependency on this type of hardware? And that path has proven to be quite successful. And then they start looking at replacements as well, right?
yeah.
Like if, at the end of the day,
Uh-huh.
if your thought process is this is an imminent risk and could happen at any moment, it may never happen. It may happen tonight.
Yeah.
Um, why are you chasing one path?
Yeah. Yeah. And I
You
think
should
that's
chase
so
them all.
critical. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's so critical right now too for just the need and diversification
Yeah.
and being able to understand your options. And that's
Mhm.
a lot of times what we are telling people because a lot of people want like this is what you should do, and unfortunately there's so much diagnostic pieces in there. It's like it's looking at, I'm 5 feet tall, Adam is 6'4", right? And the needs for our physical bodies obviously are way different. There's no one roadmap, right, that is
Mhm.
going to fit the DNA of your organization. And so you've really got to do the technical and discipline work to find out what that means. And that really starts with kind of the assessment piece. And I think this question from Avery here on LinkedIn is a good kind of next step to that. How do you distinguish between expensive but necessary versus bloated and redundant in a stack or even in a solution as well?
Yeah. Well, and I think that this goes back to one of your additional questions, which is, um, what are they doing about this? And the answer is they're trying to reduce their dependency on a singular system by increasing their use of other parts of it, right? if your entire tech stack is trash, you've got a way different problem than most people do, right? Like usually it's a couple of pieces that are underperforming, right? So that's a piece of the puzzle. Redundant, bloated and redundant, expensive but necessary. Like, all has to do with enterprise architecture, in my opinion, right? If you have, I would talk about a different client. You have a scenario where they have multiple different teams that serve within the same primary business flow, right?
Mhm.
Procure to pay, for example, where you have a sourcing team, a procurement team, a purchasing team, and you have multiple teams that are involved in the process, and they all have their own individual systems. And they are all changing their individual systems because their old individual system doesn't serve the needs of the new,
Uh-huh.
the growth that they're experiencing. That is bloated and redundant because they are taking a cohesive process and they are solving multiple pieces of it with systems that do a lot of things, but they're picking like one thing out of each system,
Mhm.
right? This is not uncommon. A different client using another software system where they're all talking different about maintenance management,
Yeah.
right? They all do different processes across multiple sites. And so they all use the same system differently.
Yeah.
Some use this piece, some use that piece. And that's a bit more effective, but we're still, it's on the other side of bloat, which is we're too singular and we're not using the whole system where
Mhm.
those organizations can. So the idea here is to overlay the thought process with what are you using from a completeness of the systems, right? If you've got 10 systems that do a variety of things and you're using niche pieces of each and they have overlapping functionality, that's a problem with your tech stack, right? So, but if every system you're using to the fullest for what it's meant to be used for, which is key, right? You want to use systems for what they're meant to be used for,
Mhm.
not kind of
Bend
pigeonhole
them
them
till
into
they
something
break.
else.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's different because that can be expensive but necessary because you need these niche systems to do niche things versus buying one system that does 10 things for the one thing that it does, and then somebody else buying another system that does 10 things for the one thing that it does, and the nine things that nobody's using are all the same, all overlapping, and something that somebody else could use somewhere else, but they're buying their own system as well.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And I mean, it comes back to kind of my core theme of this conversation. It's so specific, right? So a lot of times when people say, I've done this in your industry or things like that, all of that is cool, right? But we want to make sure that it fits within our overall stack, right? A lot of times, vendors have put a variety of different roofs on houses. Well, that's neat, but does that fix my house? Right? Does it fit my house? And that's kind of where we need
Yeah.
to focus on these conversations. I think and that is a real issue with. I would say we won't bring up AI until the end of the conversation, but here we are, and that's a real issue with buying AI at this point, right? Is what do you actually need and how much does it cost? I've heard that with so many of you, specifically with Copilot, right? You can't understand the pricing structures with Copilot. Well, that's because they're wildly complicated, right? And in 12 months, we've got to figure out why we spent millions of dollars on Copilot because we thought it was, the safe option because it's Microsoft, right? And it goes with everything else that we have. One of the comments we had on TikTok is someone was like, Microsoft is like that guy, right? Because they have already in these organizations and Copilot is just there. Also, I have to tell you on our live on TikTok, we had COBOL in there. And immediately I was like, you guys need to
Well,
talk to our team.
that's an easy answer. If your tech stack is dependent on COBOL, your tech stack is trash. It's
So there was
old.
a
You can't
COBOL
maintain.
yeah, team in there, and then I'll let you finish. There's a Cobalt team in there, and they were like, I promise you, every Fortune 500 company right now has something that they need us for, right? But they don't want to talk about it. And I was like, you guys got to talk to our CEO because you sound exactly like them. And they're like, we will only talk to him if he has a beard. And I'm like, fair enough.
Well, done. Let's set it up.
Yeah, right, right.
I
But
think
I mean, I think that's a big piece of this conversation is a lot of times there it's critically dependent on one of these very, very legacy systems that someone, Stu in IT, as we call him, only knows how to run, right? And they're coming up on retirement age, and the CEO and the board is like AI, AI, AI. And they're like, whoa, guys, like I don't even know how to use this like dinosaur of a system. And then a lot of times that's where kind of our AI dreams come crashing down, or we overbuy on that bloated software, thinking that we have things that are able to fix them, right?
yeah. Well, I think that the overbuying causes additional tech stack problems with inconsistencies in data and languages, right? So at the end of the day, a singular data warehouse is helpful with the language that's consistent with what your system uses, right? At the end of the day, whether you're a Microsoft shop, an Oracle shop, it doesn't matter from a data perspective as long as it's consistent, right? And that's really, again, where you start to look at the whole of the tech stack on which pieces serve which functions and are they serving the functions that they're intended to
Yeah,
serve and the functions that they're good at serving, right? You use a lot of different systems for a lot of different things, but if you use them for what they're bad at and not what they're good at, then you're setting yourself up for failure for sure. So and as you start to think about this from an AI perspective, your AI can only be as effective as the information that you put into it, right?
exactly.
um, if you train an AI agent on what you see on Reddit, you're not going to get a whole lot of good stuff, right? You're going to
I
get a
mean, you
whole
might
lot.
get
You're going to get a whole lot of
entertainment.
everything, good, bad, trash, all the same. And if you have a lot of good, bad, and trash within your ecosystem itself, AI is going to reflect that.
Yeah,
So it'll be a mirror that you place up to the quality of your tech stack, and it will be reflected in the business decisions that you
yeah.
make. It won't make things better by itself.
No, for sure not. And I think this question, what does a healthy tech stack actually look like in practice? Or even backing up, you can take mixed take on LinkedIn or mine. Even backing up, when do you not actually need to buy something? So we kind of talked about the critical error, mission critical piece of that, where could something happen, could it not? When is it actually healthy, and you need to maybe lean into you don't know how to use that tool right?
Yeah. I think that for me, what comes to mind right now is governance. How are you managing this? Right? It doesn't matter what brand new, super cool technology you buy and how wonderful it is if you are abusing it, right?
Yeah,
If you are the problem, if your organization is a problem and its ability to have discipline and rigor and governance and management of this, then the problem isn't going to get solved by changing software. What will end up happening is you'll buy another piece of software that gets plugged into your existing tech stack, and you'll find out that the software that it was supposed to replace also has this one really specific thing that it does
yeah,
that you didn't plan for. And now you got to keep both. And
yeah.
that's, a healthy tech stack looks like an architecture that is well orchestrated, well designed, and has a fit between systems and the business processes that they facilitate.
So let's talk about that. Let's pick up on that thread. How important is enterprise architecture in these conversations?
Um, Part of this is a maturity and a scale thing, right? Like if
Yes.
you're a small organization and you have like one or two systems, enterprise architecture is much good, right? It's kind of a big company concept. But at some point, you grow into the need for it, and you can grow way past the need for it if you don't keep an eye out on the whole. So I would say that for the companies that are if you are talking about systems like if you're using words like a master data management system or a middleware or APIs and integrations are becoming a key component of your life and management of software, then enterprise architecture is an important piece of the puzzle. How you're connecting systems together, if there are multiple connections and what you're connecting them through, is absolutely critical to the functioning of a healthy tech stack. And healthy doesn't mean new
Uh-huh.
necessarily.
Uh-huh.
Trash doesn't mean old
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
necessarily, right? Um, it needs to be well facilitated in a way that reflects an architecture, and the architecture reflects the nature of the system that functions as a whole to fit the needs of the business as succinctly as possible.
Yeah. And I think that it leads me to another thing I feel like we have to unpack is the needs of the business.
Hmm.
So clearly stated, but so misunderstood. How do you capture this, especially in a modern, tech stack where we got a little bit of this over here, we got a little bit of this over here, all of these different pieces. How important is it that you even have the behavior on your IT team, your project management team to capture the needs of the system users?
Well, that's we talk a lot about the relationship between the business and IT, right?
Uh-huh.
There are a lot of different roles, a lot of different titles for those types of things: product owner, business relationship manager, business liaison. They're all oriented towards what does the business need IT to do. I think the challenge comes when those conversations are singular
Uh-huh.
and between one person and one team,
Uh-huh.
and it doesn't flow not just laterally, but also up and down. So, on the whole, I would say that you need to have a good conversation, a good relationship with your business to be able to serve them properly. And enterprise architecture then becomes a reflection of being able to do that with the tools that you've got, as opposed to not understanding the business and your tool set well enough to realize that maybe you can use it for
Yeah.
what you're trying to use it for. Um, there's a double-edged sword in this too, though, where there's a hero mentality in a lot of organizations, which is
Yes.
I know that team's over capacity and they're the ones that ought to be fixing this problem for you, but I could get it done faster if I do this weird janky thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's just do that. I'll get you that. It'll be done by Friday, and we'll go live with it. And all of a sudden, you got some other unintended purpose
Yeah.
of a system that you shouldn't be using what you're using it for. And you're creating additional work elsewhere.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I think that's so critical to understand, and so many people don't, right? And because organizations, especially larger ones, don't have that method of collaboration between them, right? IT is still very siloed in modern organizations, and it's difficult to overcome that, especially now that, they don't necessarily control the tech stack, which
Mm.
brings me to my next kind of train of thought here. And I'm going to use this question that Avery has on LinkedIn as kind of a launch point. Who should own the integrations? I even say, who should own the technology, right? Who should own the ability to control something, especially in modern security architecture, where we need to have the ability to know what's happening in a remote workforce, who's on ChatGPT and putting our code in there. Why, just ask Claude about their, code that's now all over the internet this week. So, you know, talk to us a little bit about that.
So I think that yes, all these questions like they're the same question when they're all different questions. Right? Who should own integrations? IT owns the integration, right? An integration is a translation between one system and another, and that's a technical function, not an actual tool. So IT should own that. When it comes down to more of the who should own the system, that's a relationship thing, right? You have IT owns the technical facilitation of the system, but you have business side folks who are systems owners. The business should own the systems in general, not from a perspective of they're responsible for the functioning of them, but they're responsible for what they're supposed to be fulfilling, right? So when you have business that owns their own systems and you have a relationship there, and IT that owns the actual facilitation and the operations of those systems, you have a scenario where the business is able to say, this is what I want my system to do. And IT can say this is what we can do with that system. We've got a good question here on how the EA team should function within an IT operating model, which is a piece of the puzzle, right? EA should, enterprise architecture should serve as a function for saying, this is what system we should use for that function because we already own it and we have it for this. This is where that function belongs. This is where that function belongs. And so when you have the business says, I want this thing, and EA says, yes, you own that system and you can make that decision, or somebody else does. And so we're going to bring them into the conversation. And this is how we solve for that problem from the IT perspective. It's a collaboration, right? You have quote unquote clear ownership, yes, but at the same time, you have to continue to have draw a delineation between ownership, decision making, and collaboration.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that piece of it, I'm just pulling up that other question so that we can see it.
Mhm.
How how I'm trying to think how to ask this question. How many organizations do you feel like need that IT maturity, um, understanding, or need to grow up as an IT department? And how difficult is that?
Well, it's difficult no matter what you do, but I would say all of them, right? At some point, to some degree or another, your IT organization should be maturing, right? And the reason for that is your business is growing, right? It's growing in complexity, it's growing in reach and magnitude and size and all of these things. Um, as your business grows in complexity and its own maturity, IT should grow to match that. And that's something that should be true of every organization. Now, do you have organizations where they are on the wrong side of that, right? I spoke to Red Lobster many, many years ago. And their problem was the opposite, right? Their whatever their market share, their segment, everything is shrinking, and they've got this big, humongous tech stack that is wildly expensive and no longer serves their needs because their complexities as a business
Uh-huh.
are condensing. They're having to make trade-offs and say we can't do those types of things anymore because we don't have the money for it. And so, in that scenario, and those unfortunate scenarios where businesses are shrinking, we have a different answer. But if you're talking about what people want their business to be doing from a growth perspective, if you're assuming what IT's role should be in maturity, it should match that of the business. And as your business grows in complexity, IT should mature alongside of it.
Absolutely. And I I mean, I hope they can still execute on Lobster Fest because that's an American icon for sure. But I think that piece of it is understanding your needs, and so often that can be confusing. So let me give you a little scenario that I hear all the time, right? And you can tell us how you essentially would approach that. A lot of times we have kind of that messy core operations of a system, right? Whether it be a big green screen or a 30-year-old green screen or like a big homegrown ERP system or something like that. And then we have the executive team that is feeling the pressure from the board or whatever else or from the market in general to be like, we need AI in this organization. So they kind of put the brakes on a lot of the digital transformation projects that are kind of messy and harder and go straight to things like AI agents. What is your analysis of that approach?
Well, it sounds a lot like somebody coming in and saying, "Well, we got this brand new vacuum cleaner, and now we need to clean the floors with it." Or even better, we got this sweet brand new mop, and we got to clean the floors with it. And you haven't even thought about picking all the shit up off the floors, let alone all vacuuming it first. Like, there's you've only just started that process, right? Like, you want to stop your digital transformation to layer over more technology? That sounds backwards to me, right? So at the end of the day, you could put a fresh paint over any total disaster. And it's actually a better example now that I think about it is water damage, right? You could paint over water damage, right? And it could look real good. You get a couple, maybe you throw a couple of AIs at it. So, like, you're throwing a couple of layers of paint over that water damaged siding. And what ends up happening? It ends up peeling apart. It ends up falling apart from the bottom. All of that moisture and damage, all you've done is sealed it in. And now it's just going to do more damage on the inside, right?
Uh-huh.
And so all of that wood, all of that drywall, all the whatever it is that's water damaged, it's just going to fester at this point. You may end up with mold problems at that point too. Something's going on behind the walls. And if you're in the middle of a digital transformation and you haven't finished it, which means that you probably haven't gotten your data right.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm pretty confident say, if you're not done, then your data's not right yet. And you just start plugging in AI as if it's going to be the answer to fast tracking all and solving all of the other technical problems that you have. All you're doing is masking the problem. And is that the sheer fact that you're trying to mask the problem is probably its own symptom of a different issue, which is we're looking to have fast and easy solutions and answers to a difficult problem that we're not giving the space and appropriate attention.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I think that's a perfect analogy. 10 out of 10, no notes. What happens when a business unit wants a tool that doesn't fit into the architecture?
Well, you just figure it out, right? So at the end of the day, if the business unit wants a tool and it fits their needs and it doesn't fit into the architecture, the answer is how do we work with that, right? From an IT perspective. Now you can ask the questions of, we have a tool for that, right? So
Yes.
you say you want to buy, what's a good example? Um, Actually, a very good example is I want to buy Zoho CRM. I want to buy Sugar CRM because these are all small tools that my team can use. And your organization goes, we have Salesforce. What are you talking about? Right? Like, you want to buy this teeny tiny little thing for your individual team, and we have a system for that.
Yeah.
Right? So that's a different type of problem, right? But if a business unit wants a team, or the business unit wants a tool that doesn't fit into the architecture for one reason or another, then the answer becomes, how do we work with that, right? What are
Yeah.
our tools for APIs? What, do we have a middleware that can help? And does our vendor of this product and the other products have ways of integrating? And if they don't, what can we look at to do that? At the end of the day, if it makes business sense, then it should happen,
Yeah.
at least in the scale of the other things that make business sense that happen in order of priority, right? If it
Yeah.
makes business sense and it's this little teeny tiny thing that makes a little bit of business sense and it's, oh, it would make my life a little bit easier. And somebody else is like, right, but we've got 15 other things that are more important than your little life. And this small gain that you're seeking. So we're going to put resources towards that, right? There's a resource capacity conversation in this.
Uh-huh.
But if it doesn't fit, we got to figure out why, and we got to figure out what we can do. And if the answer to it is, well, we got to buy something else expensive, then maybe the answer is it doesn't actually become a thing, that a business tool that proves its value.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, but how many tools are too many tools?
You're talking to a guy that works on his own cars, right? Like, how many tools are too many tools? There's no answer to that.
The limit does not
There's
exist.
no number for this, right? Um, at the end of the day, if you want to know if you have too many tools, you should be looking at the redundancies,
Yeah.
right? Um, Maybe the answer is one. Maybe the answer is a million. It depends on the job that needs to be done and the business complexity that comes alongside with it, right? Who am I to say 10 tools is the right one and you have 10 critical functions, and then somebody comes and says, right, but we're not looking at cybersecurity.
Yeah.
Okay, well then it's 11, right? So how many tools is the wrong number, right number, or wrong number of tools is depends on the job.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of times it depends on what IT can manage too, right? I mean, that's one piece of it, and then how much money you're spending. I think
Mhm.
that's a huge piece that we see. I like my Copilot example at the beginning. Like if you buy 500 Copilot seats for $30 a month, right? What does that look like from an overhead standpoint? How are you going to tell if you don't have, the adoption that's needed to produce actual ROI on the investment of that tool, right?
Yeah.
So this is an interesting question about middleware. Um, why do so many tools fail at user adoption, even when they're technically solid? That's not the one about middleware. Sorry.
We can answer that one too,
Yeah.
though. The middleware question, I agree with you, but
Yeah.
tools fail at user adoption because they're not meant. They come from the wrong place, right? IT bought a tool and they gave it to the business and said, "Here, use it." So that's a big part of why tools fail at user adoption, even when they're technically solid, because they don't fit the needs of the business. The other part of it is that the change is poorly communicated, and so users don't know that it's happening, and they go to a workaround on it. I think the question that you were getting ready to ask is, how do you prevent middleware from becoming
Yes.
another
Right.
layer of technical debt? Um, this is a very good
Yeah,
question.
it really
Um,
is.
you do it by resourcing it appropriately, right? Middleware becomes another layer of technical debt when it becomes a bottleneck for everything else. And I have seen organizations where the answer is, well, we can't do that project because it affects two systems, and both those systems talk to middleware, and middleware is over capacity. They'll get to it in 9 months, right? Now what do we do? Well, we wait, right? That's the answer. No, what happens is the business goes and buys something, and then they tell you about it later, and then you got to figure out how to integrate it, and that's part of why the middleware team is over capacity. So it becomes a cyclical, self-reinforcing problem, where the answer, really, in my opinion, in preventing middleware from becoming another layer of technical debt, is to resource the middleware team appropriately so that it is not the bottleneck that becomes the every single project in our organization needs to only affect one system or not happen at all.
Interesting. I mean, there's so much in that. And I feel like there's been like this epidemic of buying some sort of middleware solution as a band-aid for broken, bad systems, and even worse, these decrepit processes that people want technology to fix.
Yeah, well, you're not wrong on that, right? And so people, um, somebody buys a middleware thinking that it's going to do the right thing, and now we've got a middleware. Now middleware becomes a part of all kinds of solutions, and then it becomes a bottleneck.
Yeah.
That's really when middleware becomes a bottleneck. It's tied to the health of IT, and it becomes like this parasitic life form that IT can't live without, and we can't improve either, right? So it's
Mhm.
you want to upgrade our middleware. Do you know how many things are tied to that? Do you know how long that's gonna take?
Yeah.
And then we got a different type of problem, which is Do you even know what's tied to middleware? Do you know where all those integrations are? Do you know where all what everything points to, where it comes from, and where it goes? That's a hard question, no matter what. That's at the very beginning. And if we've turned it into this bottleneck that the rest of the organization can't function without, and we can't do anything in IT because middleware is over capacity,
Yeah.
we got a real problem here. The
Yeah.
health of IT suffers because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that absolutely is so critical, and I think it leads really well into this question about AI making it easier. Sorry, I'm losing my mouse here. Battery must be low. But with AI making it easier to spin up tools and integrations, are we accelerating bad architecture decisions?
Um, I think that we are accelerating the use of technical tools that should be solved in different ways. There is a habit that the business has in saying, "Well, we'll just buy a new system for that. We'll just plug in a new integration. We'll create a new workflow. We'll
Yeah,
get a new AI or something like that." And we are solving the problem before we ask what it is.
yeah,
That's what I think is a challenge. The faster you get between now, there's a pro and a con to this, right? The faster you move from I have a pain to here is an answer that is a treatment of that pain, the more you leave behind. AI is speeding that decision making process up and is leaving out pieces of the conversation, right? This what I think is a great example of this is once upon a time, if you didn't feel good, you tried to see if you could get better on your own. And if you didn't get better on your own, you went to the doctor. And the doctor went and looked at what's going on and they tried to diagnose what it is you have that's causing your ailment. And you have allowed that ailment to at least mature in a way that it's easy to identify. Now I have a cough and I'm taking painkillers because my throat hurts. And I
uh-huh.
haven't diagnosed the cough, and I don't even know where the cough came from, but I'm overdoing it because of this. So there's a self medication problem in that. There's also the WebMD side of it, right? All of a sudden, I have a cough and I have cancer. Um, right? Like we are oversolving lots of simple things by throwing medication at it. And what that's doing is it's taking small problems that could be easily fixed and turning them into big expensive problems. Now if you follow the logic, and this part of the governance of medical practice is helps provide against this. But if you follow the analogy, I have a cough. I went on WebMD. I asked my AI agent of sorts, and now what's happening is I'm going through chemotherapy because I had a cough, and I've self-diagnosed this problem by buying something else expensive, and we're way off. Maybe I should have just slept it off, right?
Yeah,
Maybe the answer was to do nothing and see like pain sometimes isn't meant to be solved. It's meant to be worked through sometimes. That's not to say I have a cough and maybe I don't need a doctor to tell me I have a more significant health issue. But skipping straight from I have a small pain to I need an answer is causing the problem.
or just skipping it totally in general. I have a solution for an unknown problem, which I think that is
Exactly. I
so
love
yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you showing your age there. Is WebMD still like even a thing? Um, now we
What?
ask ChatGPT. We don't ask WebMD, and then all of a sudden we've discovered a new ailment, and we're going to patent a
Well, in
new
that scenario,
antibiotic.
you're tracking symptoms that may not necessarily be applicable to human beings. So what you end up doing is you end up having a cough and you take a horse tranquilizer because you
Yeah,
want.
yeah. Well, remember when we tested all those deer for COVID in the state of Colorado that one time? So It's not way off, right? ChatGPT wasn't the problem. Maybe we were the problem.
Right. Well, here we are, 45 minutes in, and we're
It gets weird. It gets weird at the 45-minute mark.
right, like
Absolutely.
literally 5 seconds away from what we're talking about diagnosing deer with COVID in Colorado. But
AI is your, oh, this is a funny one. AI is your next door neighbor's Labrador, makes companies more confident in making bad decisions and probably eating out of your trash tech stack in your garage as our Labrador.
that's a raccoon, and that's way different. Raccoons are dangerous, creepy animals, and you should be afraid of them.
Oh, okay. Thank you for
Just
that.
anyway, that's a major side note on that.
Well, let's answer these two questions and then we can kind of move into the, as we always want to leave you, like what can you do today, right?
Yeah.
If you are having a troubled stack. But I mean, specifically with AI, we are in this, again, epidemic of solving problems before we know what the problem is because we think the solve is AI. Do you foresee this continued rash AI movement coming to a stop? Or do you think it's something that we need to now, build business cases around it to dissuade leadership in the company?
Do I think that thousands of years of human behavior will change?
I don't know, man.
Like people have been solving problems with the wrong answer since the dawn of time, right? Raccoons are dangerous, right? Don't get me started on
Did
that.
raccoon like offend you in your life or something? Or
Are
why
you
is
have you seen what those things do to people? Like that's
I think they're pretty cute. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I think they're like adorable.
we're gonna have a separate conversation on that.
Yeah, don't hate on raccoons, man. Like
Well,
what's your
they're
issue?
disgusting animals, is what they are. But anyway, so um, are we going to solve a problem that there's been a problem since the dawn of time? No. So what we need to do is we need to, as a business, use our process and our governance. This is where governance comes from, right? Governance isn't designed to prevent other people from doing things you don't want. Governance is designed to keep you and your company from doing something stupid, right? That's what it's for. At the end of the day, what we need to do is make sure that we are making good decisions. And sometimes fast decisions are good decisions. Sometimes fast decisions are really bad decisions. And you need to be able to tell what the difference is. Sometimes the first thing you read on the internet is right. Sometimes you put, I have a cough. What should I do? Sleep it off. Cool. Sometimes sleeping it off causes more problems. What is the indicator here that I have the right answer? What is my process for saying sleeping it off is the right thing? Maybe is it just I've had a cough. I coughed one time, and I'm feeling like my throat is sore, and I'm generally healthy. Otherwise, this is my only symptom. Yeah, sleep it off. I have a cough. It's also accompanied by a variety of other symptoms. Maybe we got a different problem, right? So let's figure out, let's ask the questions, at least enough of them to say, are we doing the right thing? Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, I'm wound up about this raccoon thing, and
I
I'm just
just I just don't, I mean, I feel like you did the wounding up. Like you got like so dead serious about the raccoon type of thing. But let's end on this question because we actually just had this conversation with a client. How do you slow teams down when something is kind of going off the rail, right? Or
Mhm.
there needs to be a reset to diagnose things properly without killing the momentum? What can people watching this do to just realign, check in, make sure we're on the same path within our circle of influence, of course?
Well, you start with your feet set, right? If you never started with the right thing, and you're just charging forward for the sake of moving on something, then we have a different problem, right? So you don't necessarily need to slow your teams down. It's starting off the blocks with the right footing. Now, if you didn't start off on the right foot with the right footing, worried about killing momentum, maybe you ought to be killing
Mhm.
momentum, right? Like if I'm running downhill towards
A raccoon.
a band of them, probably, because there's never just one. And if I'm headed downhill fast towards that, and I don't have any sense of control
Yeah.
over where you better get control quick,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Like momentum isn't always a good thing. It can be a bad thing if you're headed in the wrong direction. So maybe you need to slow your teams down. But if you are appropriately paced with the right foundation, you don't slow down. You just have spot checks,
Yeah.
right? It's like
Yeah.
looking in the rear view mirror and the side view mirror. Is everything good? All right, keep moving.
Exactly.
That's what that is. It has nothing to do with where we're at right now. It has more to do with where we started.
Yeah. And checking in is never a bad thing. That's what you check your form when you lift weights, check your
Mhm.
tires before you go on a long road trip. Like there is never a bad thing. And I think a lot of times those are negative driven things. Um and it's really not. So the point of this conversation is your tech stack trash is almost like you can take out is your tech stack trash and like what is your tech stack and is it moving to where you need to go as a business, and you're only going to know that by being able to take a look at what you have, not somebody else telling you should do
Yeah.
this, not laying AI on top of it, not ignoring your data because it's not a fun project, right? All of those different things, that's what is going to diagnose it properly. And that never comes from, being the fastest down the hill towards a wild.
Yeah. I think that the best way of thinking about this is to say, I'm going 80. Am I going too fast? 80 what? 80 kilometers an hour or 80 miles an hour? That's a totally different number, first and foremost. So what's our measurement stick? And where are we? What are the conditions, right? I'm going 80 on a highway where the speed limit is 80, and um, it's dry, sunny conditions, and the road
Yeah.
is straight. That's fine, no big deal. Or I'm going 80 down a windy back road on a cliffside. It's snowing sideways, and my tires are bald. Like, well, that's stupid. So slow down, and yeah, maybe at that point, momentum's a bad thing, right? You get your little bald tires hit a patch of ice, and you're down the cliffside, and your momentum was the problem, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then the raccoons will get you.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you can't hear in the background, our company Teams chat is like, ask him about coyotes versus raccoon. Like, it just
All
we've
right,
got.
so I'm gonna
I
provide.
didn't ask you. I just so you know.
No, but you did. So now you got to deal with it. So, and I'm curious about the audience here. Would you rather be faced with five coyotes or five raccoons and figure out how to fight them off? Would you rather fight off five coyotes or five raccoons? And my answer is I will take five coyotes every day of the week because raccoons' little that opposable thumb is dangerous. And raccoons are freaky little animals that will do a whole lot more damage more quickly because they can climb up things and all types of weird stuff. They are far more dangerous than coyotes.
I don't even know what to say. Honestly, this is what happens when you work with a bunch of very too smart people for their own good. They like analyze each. I mean, you want those types of people on your technology project because they're a little nuts, right? And they analyze each level. That's what I'm working with over here, you guys. All of these very smart people that come up with. We went with a bear versus a wolf. We were on that train for like 90 days of would you rather have a bear versus a wolf in that conversation. So you let us know what you think. Me
Yes,
personally,
coyotes, they're harder to remove. See, Brian knows. Uh,
you're not
I'm
helping.
telling you, this is.
You're not helping. You're not helping. All right. Well, Here we go. Depends on the environment. But yeah, of course, like now we've got the consultants talking about it. I hope to never be in that situation, and hopefully, I'll have you to save me with your, overall project plan on what we would do on coyotes versus raccoons. But on that note, we are live, usually with, much more fundamentally important content on every
This
Friday.
is life-saving stuff.
These are life skills. And we are live on Tuesdays and Thursdays on TikTok as well. So you can join us there. You can follow my channel on TikTok, or you can follow Mick's channel. He's got a great channel for our younger audience as well. Here on YouTube, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching today. If you're watching after the fact and you have thoughts on coyotes versus raccoons or whatever we talked about today, continue to drop that comment, and we always go back in and recheck these conversations. But we really appreciate you guys being here today to join in with a little bit of fun, a little bit of very important strategy, and we are wishing you all an amazing weekend. So thank you to you, Adam. Thank you to the audience. We'll see you next week.